I was playing GTA with my friend, but the problem is, we decided to start a live stream. We got started and had a few viewers, and we were really excited. But suddenly, my parents stormed into the living room, looking upset. My dad shouted, "You boys play that game way too much. Now go play outside. I don't want to see you two until dinner." I told him, "Dad, we're in the middle of a live stream here. We'll leave in 5 minutes. Okay?" Even more furious, he said, "No, you're leaving right now. Go play outside and don't come back until dinner. Got it?" After he kicked us out, he turned to my mom and said, "Are you ready, honey?" while unbuttoning his trousers. My mom gave him a wicked smile, nodded in approval, and removed her top. I was a bit angry that he kicked us out, and after a few minutes of walking, I said, "You know, I can't believe he kicked us out of our own live stream. That's ridiculous, right?" My friend ignored me and kept staring at his phone. So I said, "Did you hear me? I can't believe he kicked us out of our own live stream." He kept staring at his phone. So I asked him, "What's going on there? What are you looking at?" My friend excitedly replied, "We're getting so many views."
Dude, we're cooked. My entire diary. She took it.
Whoa, now chill out. First of all, what diary? And secondly, why are we cooked? It's your diary, not mine.
You don't get it, bro. Everything was in there. From my no-poop July tracking to the side quest we were doing in high school. And now my girlfriend has it.
Wait, what? No. It can't be. You're only talking about the small ones, right? You didn't actually write down the real side quests.
Nah, dude. When I say everything was in there, I truly mean everything. Even the sleepover incident, when you were the first to fall asleep.
Oh god, no. Please, just tell me you left at least a few of them out. Like the October 17th one.
October 17th? That's when we snuck into a Diddy party, right? Yeah, I definitely wrote it down. Pretty sure there's even some Polaroid pics in there.
Well, crap. What about the Christmas incident? Did you at least leave that out?
Nah, bro, it's in there. That's when we sent letters to all the kids at the orphanage, right? Telling them we're their dads, and that we'd be back next year.
Man, this isn't looking good. If you really put everything in there, then she'll know about the July 13th incident and the time we got invited to Jeffrey's Island.
Alright then, are you thinking what I'm thinking?
Unfortunately, I am. Just tell her you two are going to the forest for a romantic hike. I'll have the hole dug by 7. Same spot as last time.
Who saved your life without even knowing it? My mother saved my life by cursing me out and making me go to school. It was the day after my 11th birthday. I had every intention to stay home and play the new Super Nintendo games I had received for my birthday. Usually, my mother wouldn't have had any problem with this, but that day she was adamant that I was going to get up and go to school. We got into a terrible argument and both said very hurtful things to each other. I had no choice but to go. As soon as I got to school, I had this overwhelming feeling that I just wanted to go home and lay on my mother's lap and cry. It wasn't because of the argument, but it was something else I just couldn't put my finger on. The school day was finally over and I still couldn't shake this feeling. My godbrother and downstairs neighbor wanted to come over and play the game, and even though I still just wanted to get in the house and cry, I reluctantly agreed. When we got to the door, it was locked. No big deal. Looked under the mat and the key wasn't there. Still not unusual. I climbed up the back patio and let myself in. I immediately went to the front door to let my company in. After I let them in, I went to the kitchen to get a piece of cake, and my downstairs neighbor went straight to the TV and cut it and the game on. For some reason, my godbrother started to walk through the apartment. When he came back into the living room, he told us that we needed to go outside. We begrudgingly went. Once outside, he proceeded to say, "I don't know how to say this, but your mother is dead." I darted back in and went straight to her bedroom. She was tied to the bed with the phone cord and her throat had been sliced open. There was blood everywhere. I ran back outside and downstairs to call 911 as our phone wasn't connected at the time. I didn't really know what to say, and I think the operator must have thought it was a prank because she hung up on me. So I called my grandma and told her. After that, I just sat on the bottom step until the police and paramedics started pulling up. My grandma arrived shortly after and it gets blurry from there. It will be 26 years on September 26th that this happened. Still no arrests. I feel like everyone in town knows exactly who did it, the same people I've been saying for years, but no one is willing to say anything. Mind you, her boyfriend was killed in the same way about a year before. This happened in Plymouth, North Carolina, and her name is Sonia Day. You can also look at details of her boyfriend's murder on the North Carolina Innocence Commission website under the Spruill case. My cousin was wrongfully convicted of his murder, and after all this time they are finally trying to do something about it. I've always been adamant that the same people are responsible for both murders. So that's how my mother saved my life. I would like to think that if I stayed home that day, I could have saved her somehow, but it likely wouldn't have gone that way.
What event in your life still fricks with you to this day? When I was a child, I received an invitation to a birthday party. It was handwritten and given to me by the kid whose birthday it was. When I got there, he pretended not to remember inviting me and asked to see the invitation. He denied writing it in front of many of my classmates and said I invited myself. I was so upset that I wanted to leave immediately, but my mom had already left. So I explained what happened to his mom so she could maybe drop me off. Luckily, his mom recognized his handwriting and was clearly angry at her son for being a bully, so she gave some lamingtons and a soda and told me I could go play video games by myself until my mom picked me up. That was the day I discovered that none of my classmates were my friends.
What family friend vanished from your life overnight? Daniel used to sleep in our basement 3 nights a week, and we all acted like it was normal because somehow it was. He'd been around since before I could remember, showing up at our house with this old duffel bag that smelled like motor oil and something sweet I could never place. My parents never explained who he was exactly. Not family, not from work, just Daniel. He'd help my dad fix the gutters, teach my brother Mateo card tricks, braid my hair while my mom made dinner. It started when I was maybe 7 or 8. He'd come for dinner on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays, then just not leave. My mom would say something about the guest room being too cold, and he'd shake his head, grab his bag, and head downstairs. I'd hear him moving around down there late at night, these soft footsteps that went in circles. Mateo said he was probably exercising, but I knew better. You don't exercise for 4 hours straight at 3 a.m. My mom defended him whenever dad got frustrated. She'd say Daniel had been through things, that he needed routine, needed family. But she'd get this look sometimes when she watched him, like she was doing math in her head that wouldn't add up. Brittany from next door thought he was creepy. She'd see him walking our fence line at dawn, running his hand along the posts, and she'd text me asking if we were okay. I always said yes because honestly, we were. Daniel never hurt anyone, never raised his voice, never did anything actually wrong. The thing that should have tipped us off was how he'd disappear for exactly 10 days every few months. He'd tell my parents he had work stuff, though none of us knew what he did for work. And then he'd be gone. No calls, no texts, nothing. Then he'd show back up on a Tuesday with that same duffel bag, tap the door frame, and everything would go back to normal. I remember this one Sunday dinner, maybe 6 months before everything ended. Daniel kept rubbing his shoulder, and when my mom asked if he was hurt, he just said he'd slept wrong. But when he reached for the salt, his sleeve rode up and I saw these marks on his arm. They looked like tally marks, neat little groups of 5 scratched into his skin, fresh ones. The last time I saw him was a Thursday. He seemed normal at dinner, maybe a little quieter than usual. He did his usual basement routine, but around midnight I heard him on the phone. He was trying to whisper, but sound carries weird in our house. He kept saying he'd been careful, that nobody had followed him, that he just needed more time. Then silence for a long time before I heard him say a name. Adeline. He said it like it hurt. Friday morning he was gone. Not just gone like he'd left early, gone like he'd never been there at all. His duffel bag, the blankets he used, even the playing cards he'd left on the basement table, all gone. My parents acted confused but not surprised, if that makes sense. Like they'd been expecting this but didn't know when. Mateo found one thing though. In the basement ceiling tile, pushed up into the insulation, a manila envelope with $30,000 cash and a single photo. The picture was Daniel with a woman and a little girl, maybe 4 years old. They looked happy, normal, standing in front of some house I didn't recognize. But Daniel's face in the photo, he looked younger, but also older somehow. Like the weight he carried was already there. We never talked about the money. My parents just put it in the safe and pretended it didn't exist. They cleaned out the basement, painted the walls, bought new furniture, erased him. When Brittany asked where Daniel went, my mom just said he'd move for work. Simple as that. Except I couldn't let it go. That name, Adeline. I googled different spellings, searched social media, spent hours trying to find some connection. Nothing. It was like she didn't exist either. 2 years passed. Then last month I was at the grocery store, the one 40 minutes from our house that has the good imported stuff. I was reaching for pasta when I heard it. That specific counting rhythm. 3 items into the cart, pause, 3 more. I turned around and there was this woman, maybe mid-30s, pretty in a tired way. She was with a little girl who couldn't have been more than 6. The girl was organizing apples in the cart, grouping them in 3s. The woman watched her with this expression I recognized, that same look my mom used to give Daniel. Love mixed with fear, mixed with exhaustion. I followed them. I know that's creepy, but I had to know. They paid cash, loaded their stuff into an old Camry, and I watched the woman tap the roof of the car twice before getting in, just like Daniel used to tap our doorframe. I sat in my car shaking for 5 minutes before I made myself get out. Walked up to her window before she could drive away. She looked terrified until I said Daniel's name. Her name was Adeline, his sister, not his wife like I'd assumed. The little girl was her daughter, Wyatt's daughter actually. Wyatt, who'd been Daniel's partner in this private security firm that went bad. They'd been protecting a witness, someone important, when everything went sideways. Wyatt died. Daniel didn't. But the people who killed Wyatt thought Daniel knew where the witness had hidden something. Documents or money or God knows what. So Daniel ran. But first he hid Adeline and her daughter, moved them every 10 days to keep them safe. The $30,000 was for us. Payment for being his unknowing accomplices. Or maybe apology money for when it went bad.
Parents, what's the most hilarious way your kid thought they were a financial genius? When I gave my son $200 for his birthday, I thought I was being a good dad. Maybe he'd buy some clothes, a video game, something reasonable. But the second that money hit his hands, he transformed. He leaned back, smirked, and said, "This is going to be my first investment." Investment? I reminded him that he was 11 years old and didn't even know what that word meant, but he just grinned and said, "Watch, I'm going to turn this into $1,000. Now, I knew this was going to end in disaster, but me being a supportive parent just shrugged and said, "All right, have fun." A week passed and I completely forgot about it until I got curious and asked, "So, what did you end up buying?" And without hesitation, he said, "Just some stuff I wanted," but there was nothing new in his room. No new toys, no new clothes, not even a single stick of gum. So I pressed him, and that's when he cracked. Turns out, my 11-year-old financial genius took every last dollar of his birthday money and started gambling with his friends at school. Rock, paper, scissors, coin flips, random dares. He bet it all, and he lost every single cent. I stared at him in pure disbelief. $200 gone. So I asked, why would you do that? And this kid, this absolute financial mastermind, looked me dead in the eyes and said, because I had a system, a rock, paper, scissors system. I had to take a walk. When I came back, he looked at me with the most serious face ever and said, "All right, I just need one more chance. If you give me $100, I'll get it all back." I just blinked at him. Then he doubled down. "Okay, fine, just 50. I turned to my wife. "I think we need to send him to..."
Who was the most unexpected threat to your child? My 12-year-old daughter started eating lunch alone in the bathroom every day, and I thought she was just being antisocial. But then I noticed she was coming home from school starving. She'd tear through the pantry like she hadn't eaten in days, shoving crackers and fruit snacks in her mouth so fast she could barely breathe. When I asked about lunch, she'd just say, "Wasn't hungry earlier," but her stomach would be growling so loud I could hear it across the room. Her teacher sent a note home saying Emma seemed distracted and tired during afternoon classes. Her best friend's mom mentioned that Emma had been declining sleepover invitations for weeks. She stopped asking for lunch money, even though I always packed
checked her wallet with enough for extras. My husband brushed it off. She's probably just going through a growth spurt, Lisa. Kids eat weird sometimes, but something in my gut told me this wasn't normal preteen behavior. I started packing bigger lunches, thinking maybe she needed more food. Sandwiches, fruit, chips, cookies, enough for 2 kids. But she'd still come home ravenous, frantically searching for snacks like she'd been deprived all day. No more chatting about her friends during car rides. No more excitement about school projects. No more asking if friends could come over after school. It was like my once social, happy daughter had turned into this anxious, secretive version of herself. One afternoon, I decided to surprise her with McDonald's for lunch. I showed up at school around noon and asked the office to call her down. When Emma saw me in the hallway, she looked terrified instead of excited. "Mom, what are you doing here? Is everything okay?" Her voice was shaky, almost panicked. I explained about the surprise lunch, but she kept glancing around nervously. "We can't eat in the cafeteria," she said quickly. "Can we just go sit in your car instead?" During lunch, I casually asked who she usually sat with. She got very quiet, picking at her fries. Just myself mostly. Everyone else has their own groups already. But I remembered her talking about lunch table friends just a few months ago. Sarah, Katie, and Mia were supposedly her regular crew. That evening, I called Sarah's mom to arrange a playdate. "Oh, Emma?" Sarah mentioned something about that. Apparently, Emma's been bringing some pretty unusual lunches lately. My stomach dropped. "What do you mean unusual?" "Well," Sarah said, "Emma's been eating things like plain bread and ketchup packets, sometimes just crackers. The other kids have been, well, you know how middle schoolers can be. They've been taking pictures and making comments." I felt sick. The next morning, I secretly followed the school bus and watched through the cafeteria windows during lunch period. What I saw broke my heart completely. Emma was sitting alone in the corner, opening her lunchbox. What's the most unforgivable thing a teacher ever did? I remember the room spinning as I collapsed in chemistry class, everyone staring as I clutched my stomach and started vomiting uncontrollably. The teacher standing over me with her arms crossed saying I was just trying to get out of the test. And I remember thinking, this is how I'm going to die because nobody believes me. It started 3 weeks earlier when I first told Mrs. Davidson about my severe gastroparesis. It's a condition where my stomach can't empty properly, and certain foods or stress can trigger violent episodes that land me in the hospital. I had complete medical documentation from my gastroenterologist explaining everything, which foods to avoid, warning signs to watch for, and emergency protocols if I had an episode at school. I handed her the medical note on the first day of class and watched as she barely glanced at it before shoving it in her desk drawer. She rolled her eyes and said, "Another one with a mysterious stomach condition. Let me guess, you can't take tests on schedule either?" I tried to explain that I wasn't trying to get special treatment, just needed her to understand my condition was real. But she cut me off and said she'd been teaching for 15 years and knew when students were making excuses. The next few weeks, she'd make comments whenever I'd asked to step out briefly during flare-ups. "Oh look, Emily's tummy hurts again right before we start lab work," or "must be nice to leave class whenever you want." Other students started thinking I was faking too. One boy even said, "If your stomach is so messed up, why do you eat lunch?" Which showed he didn't understand my condition at all. My mom suggested I keep a detailed food diary and check in with the nurse regularly to document everything, which I did. But Mrs. Davidson kept dismissing my medical needs. Then came the day of our midterm exam. I'd been feeling nauseous all morning but thought I could push through. About 20 minutes into the test, I knew I was in trouble. The familiar burning sensation, the cold sweats, the dizziness. I raised my hand and whispered that I needed to go to the nurse immediately. Mrs. Davidson looked at my barely started test and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Absolutely not. You can hold it until everyone finishes." I tried to explain this was a medical emergency, but she just pointed at my paper and said, "The only emergency is your test grade." I kept trying to focus on the questions, but my vision was getting blurry and my stomach was churning violently. I could taste bile rising in my throat. Finally, I couldn't hold it anymore. I vomited all over my desk, my test paper, and the floor. The smell was horrific, and other students started gagging and moving away. But
What's the funniest reason you've been called into school to collect your child? I got called to pick up my 9-year-old daughter during art class. The secretary's voice was trembling and she just said, "Please come immediately and you might want to bring a change of clothes." My stomach dropped. Change of clothes? What could a 9-year-old possibly do that required wardrobe backup? When I arrived, the parking lot was chaos. 3 custodial vans were parked out front. Maintenance workers were carrying industrial fans and what looked like hazmat equipment. The receptionist was wearing a face mask and just pointed toward the principal's office while breathing through her mouth. I noticed she had air fresheners lined up on her desk and kept spraying something every few seconds. As I walked down the hall, I could smell something absolutely horrific. Teachers were propping classroom doors open with fans blowing outward. One teacher was on the phone saying, "Yes, we may need to evacuate the entire wing." Evacuate? My mind raced through every possible scenario. Had my daughter brought something rotten, dead, chemically dangerous? I passed the nurse's office where 5 kids were sitting outside in the hallway, all looking green around the gills. One was dry, heaving into a bucket. Another kid was crying, "I can't get the smell out of my nose." The principal was waiting with the school nurse, a maintenance supervisor holding industrial cleaning supplies, and what looked like the district's crisis management coordinator. "Ma'am, before we begin, I need to inform you that this incident may require temporary building closure," the coordinator said, pulling out a tablet. "Do you consent to us documenting this for insurance purposes?" I was panicking. "What did she do?" "Ma'am, we need to ask. Does your daughter have access to any unusual items at home?" the principal asked, looking genuinely disturbed. "Any expired food, chemical experiments, dead animals?" I was completely lost. "No. Why? What happened? Is someone hurt?" The nurse stepped forward, still wearing a medical mask. "Well, she brought something to school today that caused quite an aromatic situation." situation. We've had to call in professional cleaning services. My daughter was going to be expelled. I was going to be liable for fumigation costs. I started mentally preparing for lawsuits and insurance claims. Multiple classrooms had to be evacuated, the coordinator added, taking notes. We need to understand the source of the substance. The principal opened his desk drawer like he was handling biohazardous material and pulled out an empty lunch container with rubber gloves. She told everyone this was a special science experiment from home. She was charging kids 25 cents each to smell it. 25 cents. My daughter was running a biological war.
I announced that my dad's not paying my college tuition. So, my dad has always been this super generous guy who acts like family comes first, but secretly resents every dollar he spends on us. Like, we're talking about a man who buys expensive steaks for dinner guests and then makes us eat leftovers for a week because food is food. He drives a brand new truck that he washes every weekend and talks about his investment portfolio at barbecues. But he makes my mom buy generic shampoo and tells her to water it down to make it last longer. Anyway, I'm a senior in high school and college acceptance letters are coming in. All my friends are talking about dorm room shopping and their parents are planning campus visits. Meanwhile, my dad keeps making these passive-aggressive comments about how college kids these days don't appreciate what they have, but he never actually said he wouldn't pay for college, so I just assumed he would. Big mistake. I got accepted to my top choice with a decent scholarship. I was so excited and burst into the living room to tell my parents. My mom started crying happy tears and hugged me, but my dad just looked at me and said, "Congratulations, hope you figured out how to pay for it." I was confused and asked what he meant. He shrugged and said, "College is your investment now. Time to learn about the real world." I felt my heart sink. This man had literally never mentioned that I'd be financing my own education. We'd never had that conversation. I was so angry and betrayed that I decided to be petty about it. If he wanted to blindside me, I'd return the favor. The next week was my graduation party at our house. All my relatives were there, plus family, friends, and neighbors. My dad loves playing the proud father role in front of people, so he was in his element, talking about his successful daughter and how proud he was of my achievements. That's when I struck. During the cake cutting, I stood up and tapped my fork against my glass like I was making a toast. Everyone got quiet and looked at me. I smiled real big and said, "Thanks everyone for coming to celebrate with me. I just wanted to share some exciting news about my college plans." My dad looked proud, probably thinking I was about to thank him or something. I got into my dream school with a scholarship, which is amazing because my dad just told me he's not helping pay for my education at all. The room went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. My Aunt Susan's mouth literally fell open. Uncle Mike nearly choked on his beer. My dad's face went bright red, but I wasn't done. Yeah, apparently college is my responsibility now. But somehow there's enough money for his new golf clubs and that fishing trip to Alaska next month. A few people started looking uncomfortable. But don't worry, Dad. I understand. Priorities, right? I mean, that brand new truck in the driveway isn't going to pay for itself with love and good intentions. By now, half the room was trying not to stare, and the other half looked absolute.
When did you realize that some people truly deserve a special place in hell? 3 days after my 15-year-old son Marcus broke his leg during football practice, Coach Thompson told me he was faking it for attention and threatened to kick him off the team if he didn't man up and play through the pain. Marcus came home that Friday night limping badly, his ankle swollen to twice its normal size. He could barely put weight on it, but when I asked what happened, he just said Coach told him it was probably just a sprain and to ice it over the weekend. I immediately took him to urgent care. The x-rays showed a clean break in his fibula and a severe sprain. The doctor said he was lucky it wasn't worse and fitted him with a walking boot, saying he'd need 6 to 8 weeks to heal properly. When I called Coach Thompson to let him know about the break, he actually laughed. That kid's been looking for an excuse to quit all season. A little fracture never hurt anybody. If he was really injured, he would have gone down harder. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Coach, he has a broken bone." "Ma'am, I've been coaching for 25 years. I know the difference between hurt and injured. Marcus is just soft like half these kids today. Tell him if he's not at practice Monday, he's off the team." The next day, Marcus was in tears. Not from the pain, but because he thought he was letting his team down. He begged me to let him practice, even though he could barely walk to the bathroom without wincing. When I showed up to practice Monday to explain the situation again, Thompson dismissed me in front of the entire team. Some parents coddle their kids instead of teaching them toughness. This is why we're raising a generation of quitters. But Marcus was determined to prove himself. Against my better judgment and the doctor's orders, he showed up to practice Tuesday in his walking boot. That's when Thompson made him run laps to test if the injury was real. I watched from the parking lot as my son hobbled around the track, his face twisted in agony, while Thompson yelled that he was embarrassing himself and the team. Other parents started filming because they couldn't believe what they were seeing. Marcus collapsed on the third lap, not dramatically. He just quietly sat down on the track and started crying. The bone had shifted, causing additional damage that would require surgery. At the hospital, the orthopedic surgeon was furious. Who told this kid to run on a broken leg? This could have caused permanent damage to his growth plate. That's when I discovered the real truth. 3 other parents approached me in the waiting room. Their sons had all been pressured to play through injuries. One kid had a concussion and was still hitting in practice. Another had torn ligaments that Thompson insisted were just sore muscles. Thompson had been covering.
Who was the most unexpected threat to your child? My 12-year-old daughter started eating lunch alone in the bathroom every day, and I thought she was just being antisocial. But then I noticed she was coming home from school starving. She'd tear through the pantry like she hadn't eaten in days, shoving crackers and fruit snacks in her mouth so fast she could barely breathe. When I asked about lunch, she'd just say, "Wasn't hungry earlier," but her stomach would be growling so loud I could hear it across the room. Her teacher sent a note home saying Emma seemed distracted and tired during afternoon classes. Her best friend's mom mentioned that Emma had been declining sleepover invitations for weeks. She stopped asking for lunch money, even though I always packed checked her wallet with enough for extras. My husband brushed it off. She's probably just going through a growth spurt, Lisa. Kids eat weird sometimes, but something in my gut told me this wasn't normal preteen behavior. I started packing bigger lunches, thinking maybe she needed more food. Sandwiches, fruit, chips, cookies, enough for 2 kids. But she'd still come home ravenous, frantically searching for snacks like she'd been deprived all day. No more chatting about her friends during car rides. No more excitement about school projects. No more asking if friends could come over after school. It was like my once social, happy daughter had turned into this anxious, secretive version of herself. One afternoon, I decided to surprise her with McDonald's for lunch. I showed up at school around noon and asked the office to call her down. When Emma saw me in the hallway, she looked terrified instead of excited. "Mom, what are you doing here? Is everything okay?" Her voice was shaky, almost panicked. I explained about the surprise lunch, but she kept glancing around nervously. "We can't eat in the cafeteria," she said quickly. "Can we just go sit in your car instead?" During lunch, I casually asked who she usually sat with. She got very quiet, picking at her fries. Just myself mostly. Everyone else has their own groups already. But I remembered her talking about lunch table friends just a few months ago. Sarah, Katie, and Mia were supposedly her regular crew. That evening, I called Sarah's mom to arrange a playdate. "Oh, Emma?" Sarah mentioned something about that. Apparently, Emma's been bringing some pretty unusual lunches lately. My stomach dropped. "What do you mean unusual?" "Well," Sarah said, "Emma's been eating things like plain bread and ketchup packets, sometimes just crackers. The other kids have been, well, you know how middle schoolers can be. They've been taking pictures and making comments." I felt sick. The next morning, I secretly followed the school bus and watched through the cafeteria windows during
What's the wildest thing you've seen a parent allow? I was at the airport waiting for a delayed flight to visit my grandmother. The terminal was packed. People sleeping on the floor, toddlers crying, announcements blaring every few minutes. I managed to find a quiet corner near a charging outlet to get some work done on my laptop. A woman sat down nearby with her son, who looked about 7 years old. Within seconds, the kid started kicking the back of the seat in front of him. An elderly man was sitting there, clearly trying to rest. After a few minutes, the man turned around and gently said, "Hey there, buddy. Would you mind stopping that? I'm trying to catch a nap." The mom immediately jumped in, defensive and loud. "He's just restless from the flight delay. Kids need to move around or they get anxiety." The man nodded politely and turned back around. But the kicking didn't stop. It got worse. Louder thuds, more force. The old man winced with every hit. After nearly 20 minutes, the man turned around again. "I'm really tired and I have a medical condition. Could you please help him find another outlet for his energy?" That's when the mom snapped. "Are you medical shaming my child? He has ADHD. I won't suppress his needs for your comfort." Her voice echoed across the gate area. Then it got wild. The kids started throwing goldfish crackers at random passengers, laughing as they bounced off people's heads. Juice boxes rolled under chairs. Instead of stopping him, the mom pulled out her phone and started filming. "He's showing his creativity," she announced proudly. "This is how gifted children express themselves." A flight attendant approached her politely and said, "Ma'am, we need to keep the gate area clean and safe." The mom absolutely lost it. "This is discrimination against neurodivergent children. I'm calling the airport police for harassment." She wasn't joking. She actually pulled out her phone and started dialing while her son sprinted between rows of seats, nearly knocking over travelers with luggage. At one point, a businessman politely asked the boy to slow down near his expensive equipment bag. The mom screamed, "Stop targeting my family." Another exhausted parent, trying to help, said gently, "I have 3 kids with ADHD. There are ways to help them cope without disrupting everyone else." The mom turned on her like a switchblade. "You're not a real advocate. You're just perpetuating ableist stereotypes." Then came the final straw. The kid climbed onto the check-in counter and started pressing buttons on the computer behind it. The gate agent rushed over in a panic. "He can't touch that. It could
What moment made it clear you weren't the favorite child? I realized it when my parents spent my college fund on my brother's rehab, and then told me I should be grateful he was getting the help he needed. I was 17 when I found out, just months before graduation, when I was supposed to be applying for financial aid. My brother Jake had been struggling with addiction since high school. Every few months, there'd be another crisis. Caught dealing drugs, arrested for stealing, overdosing at a party. Each time, my parents would empty their savings to fix whatever mess he'd created, always with the promise that this time would be different. Meanwhile, I'd been working part-time jobs since I was 14, saving every penny for college while maintaining a 4.0 GPA. My parents always praised my responsibility and independence, saying they never had to worry about me because I had everything figured out. I thought that meant they were proud of me. When college application deadlines approached, I asked my parents about the education fund they'd always mentioned. My grandmother had left money specifically for her grandchildren's education when she died, and I'd been counting on it to avoid massive student debt. That's when they sat me down for the conversation that changed everything. "We need to talk about your college plans," my mom said, looking uncomfortable. "The education fund isn't available anymore." I was confused. Had they lost it in bad investments? Was there some kind of financial emergency I didn't know about? "We used it for Jake's treatment program," my dad explained. "He needed intensive rehabilitation, and insurance only covered basic care. The specialized facility cost $40,000, but it was his best chance at recovery." That was the entire college fund my grandmother had set aside for both of us. "What about my education?" I asked, feeling like the ground was shifting under my feet. "You have such good grades," my mom said. "You'll qualify for scholarships. Jake needed immediate help, but you're capable of figuring this out on your own." The worst part wasn't even losing the money. It was the assumption that because I'd never been a problem, I didn't deserve the same investment they were making in Jake. They'd spent years telling me how proud they were of my achievements. eloquence. But when it came time to put money behind those words, Jake's needs automatically came first. I applied for every scholarship I could find and worked overtime at my restaurant job to save application fees. My parents occasionally asked how the college search was going, but they never offered to help with costs or seemed concerned about my stress level. Meanwhile, Jake's recovery was the constant focus of family discussions. When I got accepted to my dream school with a partial scholarship, I was excited to share the news. "That's wonderful, honey," my mom said. "We're so proud of you." Then she immediately turned to Jake. "See, your sister proves that hard work pays off. This is what made the high school legend become a legend. Our vice principal, Mrs. Rodriguez, had this corrupt system where she'd suspend students for dress code violations and force them to buy overpriced school clothes from her personal collection to get back into class. She called it maintaining standards, but everyone knew it was straight up extortion. The worst part was targeting kids whose families couldn't afford designer clothes. If you wore anything she deemed inappropriate, which could be perfectly normal jeans or sneakers, you'd get suspended until you bought her marked up approved clothing. This quiet sophomore Maya was heading to her AP chemistry class when Rodriguez cornered her by the lockers. Maya was wearing regular black jeans and a plain gray sweater, nothing remotely inappropriate. "Miss Chen, those jeans are too tight and that sweater is unprofessional," Rodriguez announced with her usual smirk. "You're suspended until you can dress appropriately for a learning environment." Maya just stood there, calm as anything, and said, "Okay, but you should probably know these clothes cost $300 total. The jeans are designer and the sweater is cashmere from Nordstrom." Rodriguez actually scoffed. "Nice try, honey. I know discount store clothes when I see them. You can buy proper attire from our school collection for $150, or your parents can meet with me about your inability to follow basic dress codes." Maya nodded thoughtfully. "All right, can I at least get written documentation of exactly which part of the dress code I'm violating? You know, something that references the specific rule I broke?" "We don't need to justify obvious violations to students," Rodriguez replied dismissively. "Interesting." Maya pulled out her phone and started recording. "Could you repeat which dress code rule I'm violating, for the record?" Rodriguez tried to grab the phone. "You can't record school disciplinary meetings." "Actually, according to state law, I can record any interaction involving my educational rights. This is now a formal complaint about discriminatory enforcement of dress codes." Maya kept recording as she calmly recited her rights. Her mom was a civil rights attorney who had coached her on exactly what to say. "I'm documenting that you've suspended me for wearing $300 worth of appropriate clothing while offering to sell me replacement clothes from your personal collection. That's called a kickback scheme in the legal world." Rodriguez's face went from smug to terrified. "Turn off that phone right now." "Actually, I'm calling my mother. She's an attorney who specializes in educational discrimination cases." Maya dialed while Rodriguez watched helplessly. Within 30 minutes, Maya's mom arrived with a briefcase and a very serious expression. She immediately requested a meeting with the principal and demanded to see the official dress code policy. Turns out Rodriguez had been making up violations.
What's one confession you'd only make anonymously? In college, I lived in a dorm with my roommate Alex, who was the most trusting person ever. He never locked his door, left his laptop open, kept cash scattered around. I respected his stuff, but thought he was too naive. Our neighbor down the hall was Zoe, who seemed sweet at first. She'd hang out in our room, borrow things, study with us, but I started noticing weird patterns. My favorite pens would disappear. Alex's energy drinks would vanish. Small amounts of cash would go missing from his desk. Alex never complained because he figured he'd just misplaced things or consumed them without remembering. He's too nice to accuse anyone of theft, but I started keeping mental notes. Every time Zoe hung out with us, something would be gone the next day. A highlighter here, $10 there, my phone charger, Alex's earbuds. Nothing major enough to cause drama, but it was adding up over weeks. The breaking point came when Alex's mom sent him a care package with homemade brownies and a $40 gift card for the campus dining hall. The gift card disappeared the same day Zoe had been studying in our room. Alex was heartbroken because his mom had written a note saying the gift card was to help with meal costs since money was tight for their family. He spent 2 hours searching everywhere for it, convinced he'd lost it somehow. I knew Zoe had taken it, but I couldn't prove it. If I accused her without evidence, it would create unnecessary drama and make Alex feel worse. So I decided to set up a trap. I went to the ATM and got 8 brand new $10 bills. I wrote down all the serial numbers and took photos of them with my phone for documentation. Then I strategically placed them in different spots around our room where Zoe would definitely see them when she came over. One in my textbook, one in Alex's backpack, one on my desk, one in our snack drawer. The next day, when Zoe came over to work on a group project, I made sure to leave the room for about 15 minutes to grab coffee. Alex stayed behind typing his essay. Perfect setup for my plan. When I returned, I casually checked all my marked locations. 2 of the 10 bills were gone, the ones from my textbook and Alex's backpack. I didn't say anything that day. I waited for the right moment. 3 days later, Zoe mentioned she was going to the campus bookstore. She asked if we needed anything. Alex said no, but I said, "Sure, could you grab me some index cards?" Perfect opportunity to execute my plan. Zoe came back with my index cards and some notebooks for herself. When she wasn't looking, I checked her wallet while she went to the bathroom. There were my 2 $10 bills with the exact serial numbers I'd memorized, but I still didn't confront her directly. I had a much better idea brewing. The next week, Zoe threw a small birthday party in her room. She invited everyone from our floor, including me and Alex, naturally. The party was getting pretty fun, and Zoe was tipsy and talking about how she'd been making some easy money lately from odd jobs. That's when I decided to make my strategic move against her. I casually mentioned to several people that I'd been tracking some stolen money using serial numbers, and I was pretty sure someone at the party had the marked bills on them right then. Zoe immediately got defensive and said, "That's insane. Nobody here would steal money from friends." She was slurring slightly.
When did the family who called you a monster come crawling back for help? I was 19 when my drug-addicted cousin stole my grandmother's jewelry during Christmas dinner, and I was the only one who saw him do it. Everyone called me a liar when I reported it, but they came running back when they needed someone to bail him out of jail. It happened during our big family Christmas at Grandma's house. My cousin Derek had been struggling with addiction for years, but the family always made excuses for him. He's sick, they'd say. He needs support, not judgment. Meanwhile, he'd been stealing from relatives for months to fund his habit. I was helping Grandma in her bedroom when I saw Derek slip inside and start rifling through her jewelry box. He pocketed her wedding ring, the pearl necklace from her mother, and several other pieces pieces worth thousands of dollars. When I confronted him, he claimed he was just looking for aspirin. During gift opening, Grandma noticed her jewelry box was open and items were missing. I immediately told everyone what I'd seen Derek doing. The room erupted. Derek denied everything and started crying about how his addiction was a disease and he'd never steal from family. My aunt, Derek's mother, turned on me with fury. "How dare you accuse him when he's trying to get clean?" she screamed. "You've always been jealous of the attention Derek gets." My uncle joined in, saying I was trying to destroy Derek's recovery with false accusations. Even my own parents sided against me. "Derek's been sober for 2 months," my dad said. "You're probably just mistaken about what you saw." Grandma sat there quietly, while her own family called her granddaughter a liar to protect the actual thief. The family meeting that followed was brutal. They painted me as the troublemaker who couldn't accept Derek's progress. Derek put on this Oscar-worthy performance, talking about how hurt he was that his own cousin would make up such terrible lies about him. I was uninvited from future family gatherings until I apologized to Derek for my false accusations. They said my negativity was toxic to Derek's recovery process, and I needed to work on my own issues with resentment and jealousy. For 3 years, I was essentially exiled from the family, missed birthdays, holidays, graduations, all because I'd told the truth about Derek's theft. Meanwhile, Derek continued stealing from family members, but they kept making excuses and covering for him. I focused on college and built my own life, got a degree in criminal justice, landed a good job with the prosecutor's office, and started dating someone who actually believed me when I told them what happened. My girlfriend couldn't understand how a family could turn on someone for reporting a crime. Then came the phone call that changed everything. Derek had been arrested for armed robbery at a convenience store. He was looking at 10-15. What's the best instant karma you've ever seen in a classroom? There was this kid, Marcus, who thought he was the smartest person in our entire school. During every test, he'd finish in half the time and make a big show of checking his watch, sighing loudly, and rolling his eyes at how easy everything was. When kids asked for help, he'd say things like, "Maybe you should transfer to the remedial class where you belong." Marcus constantly interrupted our teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, to correct her or explain things in what he called a way normal people could understand. He'd bring college textbooks to class and read them during lessons, making sure everyone could see the advanced titles. When other students struggled with algebra, Marcus would laugh and say he'd been doing calculus since elementary school. The worst part was how he treated this quiet girl named Emma who sat behind him. Every time she asked a question, Marcus would turn around and say, "Seriously? We covered this yesterday. Were you even listening?" He'd grab her homework to show her all the mistakes, loudly announcing each wrong answer to anyone within earshot. During parent conferences, Marcus's dad demanded a meeting with the principal. He claimed his son was being held back by inferior teaching and needed to be moved to advanced placement classes immediately. "Marcus is teaching himself quantum physics at home," his dad bragged. "This basic math is insulting his intelligence." Ms. Rodriguez listened patiently, then smiled. "I think Marcus would benefit from a special challenge. I have the perfect opportunity for him." She arranged for the state math competition team captain to visit our class and give a practice problem to potential candidates for the regional tournament. When the college student arrived, Marcus practically jumped out of his seat, volunteering to demonstrate his abilities. The visitor, Sarah, put a single problem on the board and invited Marcus to solve it in front of everyone. Marcus swaggered up confidently, talking about how easy this would be. He started writing immediately, filling the board with complicated symbols and equations that looked impressive to the rest of us 7th graders. "This is obviously using advanced trigonometric identities," he announced while scribbling. "Most people wouldn't understand the complex derivations I'm applying here." Marcus stepped back from his work triumphantly. "And that's how you solve a real math problem," he declared, turning to the class with a smug grin. "Any questions about my advanced methodology?" The room was silent as everyone stared at the board covered in his elaborate calculations. Sarah examined his work carefully, then turned to face Marcus with a gentle smile. "That's very creative, Marcus. You certainly used a lot of symbols up there." Marcus beamed. "Have you ever seen someone call the cops and it backfire on them?" My ex-husband Jake had been violating our custody agreement for months with manipulative games, but I had no idea he'd eventually confess to kidnapping while trying to get me arrested for harassment. It started when Jake began showing up at Emma's school during my custody days, claiming he needed to check on her well-being because I was supposedly neglecting her. The school secretary confirmed I had legal custody those days, but Jake insisted there were safety concerns that overrode the court order. The harassment escalated after I started dating someone new. Jake would text me 47 times in one evening, demanding to know where Emma was, who she was with, what she was eating, all completely outside his scheduled visitation. When I stopped responding, he'd show up at my workplace, my gym, even my grocery store, claiming he was just shopping, but clearly following my routine. So I started documenting everything. Screenshots of his obsessive messages, photos of him lurking in parking lots, timestamps of his random appearances everywhere I went. That's when I discovered something disturbing. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, mentioned seeing a man in a blue Honda sitting outside my house for hours when Emma and I weren't home. Jake drove a blue Honda. The really sick part? He was using Emma as his excuse for everything. He'd pump her for information during his weekends. "Does mommy's new boyfriend sleep over? Does he touch you inappropriately? You can tell daddy if something bad happens." Then he'd text me claiming Emma had expressed concerns about my parenting. But here's where someone calls the cops on themselves. One Friday evening, Emma didn't come home from school. I panicked, called everyone, checked with friends' parents. Nothing. Jake's phone went straight to voicemail. At 8 p.m., I finally called the police to report Emma missing. 2 hours later, Jake called from a hotel 3 counties away. "Emma's safe with me. She told me you've been leaving her alone at night to go party with your boyfriend." I had to protect her, but it was my custody weekend. Jake had literally kidnapped our daughter. I rushed to the police station with our custody agreement. The officer was taking my statement when Jake burst through the doors, Emma in tow, shouting about my unfit parenting. He marched right up to the desk desk sergeant. "I want to file a report about child endangerment," he announced loudly. "This woman has been neglecting our daughter, leaving her with strange men, creating an unsafe environment. I had to remove Emma from danger." The desk sergeant looked confused. "Sir, are you Jake Morrison?" "Yes, and I demand you arrest this woman immediately."
My daughter's teacher stole her phone and failed to recognize her panic attack during class. My daughter's 16F new Spanish teacher refuses to let any students have their phone in class and collects them at the door. She believes that students will just use their phones to cheat and won't let any student stay in her class unless they give her their phones. The problem with that is that my daughter went through a traumatic experience in middle school and has been unable to be away from her phone since. Basically, her middle school went into lockdown, and all her teacher and fellow students knew was that there might be an active shooter on campus. My daughter texted me absolutely terrified, and as I tried to figure out what was going on, I got dozens of texts from my daughter's phone. They were all messages her classmates wished for me to share with their families if anything happened to them. It was heartbreaking. The lockdown was lifted after an hour of silence, and I learned later there was gunfire reported nearby. I will always be grateful that's all it was. Since that day, she has been unable to part from her phone because she's terrified something like that might happen again, and she wants to be able to contact me. She said panic attacks before when her phone dies unexpectedly. She is currently in therapy and working past it. But for now, I told her that if a teacher ever has an issue, to just say I have a rule that she must have her phone on her at all times. It's never been a problem, until now. When the teacher asked for my daughter's phone, she explained she can't part with it. It turned into a back and forth, so my daughter said she'd be willing to go to the principal's office and have them call me, but she couldn't give up her phone. Instead of listening, her teacher snatched my daughter's phone away and told her to go sit down. My daughter listened to her and told me later that she tried really hard to use breathing tactics her therapist taught her, but in the end, the idea of being in a classroom with no access to her phone terrified her too much, and she had a horrible panic attack. Apparently, the teacher ignored her and told other students to ignore her tantrum until one of her friends yelled that she needed to go to the nurse. The teacher told them to stop being so dramatic and focus on her lesson. My daughter's friend ended up grabbing my daughter and walking out of the classroom to go to the nurse's office. Thankfully, everything ended up okay, and the nurse let her hold on to her own cell for a while, which calmed her down. They called me to inform me of what happened, but said I needed to come in to discuss my daughter's behavior issues before school let out. Apparently, her new teacher felt incredibly disrespected by my daughter and was insisting on having a group meeting with my daughter and her friend with their parents. During the meeting, she laid out what happened, and I explained it was important my daughter keep her phone, and while she should have communicated better, I stand by her decision. The teacher insisted that both my daughter and her friend get detention for their disrespect, but all of us thought that was ridiculous.
What's the weirdest thing you've seen happen at a friend's house that they thought was normal? When I was younger, my dad passed away. My mom remarried and had 2 more kids. I was moved into the unfinished basement when I was 10. My room had bare concrete walls, wood beams, and cement flooring, separated from the laundry area by a sheet. I used a heater and a dehumidifier because it was cold and humid. My parents didn't allow my friends over, and my siblings weren't allowed in my room. During family gatherings, I was told to use the guest room instead of my basement space. At the time, I thought it was cool because no one could mess up my huge room. Starting at 12, my family went on yearly vacations without me. I stayed home to watch the dog and the house. When I was 17, during one of those trips, I invited a friend over. They immediately pointed out how strange it was that my siblings had fully furnished bedrooms with TVs. There was a fully furnished guest room, and I was living in a basement with sheets for walls and bathroom mats on the floor. At the time, I dismissed it because it felt normal to me. It wasn't until I was 20 that I found out the family trips I didn't go on were paid for with money from my dad's passing. Some of it went to things I needed, but realizing how it was used has left me feeling pretty messed up. My siblings have no memory of the situation, and when I bring it up, they back my parents, saying we were raised right and that I opted out of vacations. The whole thing still bothers me.
Bro, I'm 99% sure Anna is cheating on you.
Huh, what makes you think that?
I came by your house and saw a guy in your bedroom window.
No way. Was it this guy?
Yeah, how'd you know?
That's the pool guy.
So what are we gonna do about it?
Oh, I have an idea. Remember that armless amputee kid we had at our school and how we used to put that long-lasting itching powder in his shirt when he was at gym class every day for 3 straight years until it got so bad that his parents thought he had a massive rash and he stopped coming into school and was stuck in a hospital for months, which cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars for treatment because the doctors couldn't identify the disease, and that put his parents in debt, so they had to move back to his home country where they ended up homeless.
Oh yeah, that was funny as f. What about it?
Well, I'm thinking we put it in my bed, and if I see him itching, then we know that he was on there.
That's why you're the group leader, bro. Always coming up with the greatest ideas.
You know it, brother.
But where are you gonna sleep?
I'll just tell her we're going on a fishing trip for the weekend and crash at one of the sneaky links.
I'm trying to find my soulmate by texting random numbers. Hey!
Hi, have you texted anyone else?
Nope, you're the first. And you responded. I guess we're soulmates then.
I guess so.
You're a girl, right?
Yes.
What's your name?
Jessica, how about you?
Marley.
That's a unique name. I have a cousin named Marley, too. What a odd coincidence.
Wait, I have a cousin named Jessica. Are we cousins?
I hope not.
What's your last name?
Brown? Don't tell me your last name is Brown, too.
No, it's not.
Okay, good.
Except it actually is Brown.
Why would you tell me it's not?
You told me to say it wasn't.
You sound just like my cousin Marley.
Maybe it's just a coincidence. We might not be related and just have the same last name and cousins with the same first name.
You're right. There's no way we're cousins. What's your mom's name?
Kaylee.
My Aunt Kaylee?
Maybe that's a coincidence too. What's your mom's name?
Adeline.
I have an Aunt Adeline.
I'm your cousin Jessica. This is so weird.
If you really are my cousin Jessica, what happened when we were playing house that one day?
We told each other we wouldn't speak of that.
OMG, it really is you.
Guess you aren't the love of my life.
Don't say that. Cousin is just a title. Are we gonna give up true love because of this?
That's disgusting. Wait, didn't you ask my mom for my phone number last weekend? She texted me and asked if she could give it to you.
Dads, what was your don't tell mom about this moment? When I was 12 or so, I walked into my dad's office to find him counting money. He says, "Don't tell mom, and you'll find out what it's for." So I don't say a thing. 2 days later, he woke me up early to run errands with him. We came back with a new used but new for us car. He also said if I don't tell how much he spent on it, he'll let me drive it. It was only a couple $100s, but we were broke, and she would have been mad. My mother tried so hard to find out, but I kept the secret. So anytime we were in an open space like an empty lot, he would let me drive it. I felt like the coolest kid in middle school knowing how to drive a car. Again, don't tell your mother, he says. When I got my permit at 16, I was so excited to drive it for real. I asked my mother if I can drive her around when she has to go out, but she says absolutely not, since I have no experience. Well, I can't argue because I don't want to get dad in trouble. This goes on for a few weeks. I keep asking, she keeps telling me no. This finally happened one day while dad was home and overheard. He comes in, the room gives me a nod and says to my mother's, "He's a better driver than you anyway." Tosses me the keys and tells mom everything. I was so stoked and cheering, "I can drive, I can drive." Dad says, "Drive it? If you can keep a secret for that long, you can keep the car too."